Yes, welcome back. We'll still continue with our news review this morning, and of course the State of the Nation address 2017 made yesterday by President Uhuru Kenyatta is the biggest headline, and we continue with our discussion. Just before the break, we're tackling the issue of corruption. I want us to move on to something else, and of course the other big headline and features on at least two of the dailies. On the Standard it reads, salaries fall. President confronts unsustainable rise in public wage by backing SRC's decision to lower earnings of next crop of elected officials. On the Star, this is how it reads, MPs, MCAs salaries to be cut after August falls. President tells leaders to be unselfish, says their pay has led to demands by others and must accept harmonization. Now, because I want us to see, and if my director could help me with this story by Jackie Maribe on the wage bill, because the wage bill is huge. If that story is ready, we could start with that.
That has ballooned to breaking point, at least according to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission and President Uhuru Kenyatta. 50% of the government's total revenue goes to pay public officers. Simply put, the pay package for all the 700,000 state and public officers means a mere 2% of all 44 million Kenyans eat up 627 billion shillings in wages. If a report handed to the President today by SRC is implemented, leaders elected in the August polls will earn less than those currently sitting.
This report recommends, amongst other things and other measures, a rationalization of the salaries and allowances paid to senior state officers, public servants, elected officials, from MCA all the way to President. That will result in a reduction in salaries and allowances for those elected in August this year.
The report, covering between 2017 and 2022, has recommended the rationalization of salaries paid to state and public officers. The President saying a series of strikes, including those by doctors, teachers and lecturers, have further burdened taxpayers.
During my term, some unions have put pressure on the government to further increase the wage bill to unsustainable levels without the constitutional and mandatory input from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. These are issues that need to be resolved by all of us soberly, because we are fast approaching the breaking point.
Sources tell Citizen TV that a technical team has been set up to look at the range of possible pay cuts based on economic performance, studies of public salaries in other countries, and the recently concluded job evaluation of public officers. The team has 3 weeks to present its report to the Commission for tabling in Parliament. This raising concerns over whether MPs would support such cuts. Exactly 3 years ago, in March of 2014, President Kenyatta announced that he and his deputy William Ruto would take a 20% pay cut, while cabinet secretaries would take a 10% pay cut to ease the wage bill, a matter that ran into legal and bureaucratic hurdles.
Most importantly, by so doing, we shall all be respecting the wishes of our own employers, the Mwananchi of this country.
So, is it a question of when or if state and public officers will agree to collectively take a pay cut?
That story by Jackie Maribe is what we want to delve into now. And Senator Mutula, if we could start with you. Of course, this is one of the positive things. I heard even your colleague, Senator Hassan Omar, commending that one aspect of the President's speech yesterday. Yes. Do you think that made a huge highlight for you?
Yes, it was an admission that we are overpaid in the category of public officers. But my view is different. That there are two issues actually. Your reporter says that this will run into legal impediments. I'm concerned that at this point in time, the report must come to Parliament, because if it's not debated and resolved before the election under the Constitution, the next Parliament will not be able to touch it. And if it does, it will not affect them, because the law forbids us from dealing with anything that gives us direct pecuniary benefit. And if we do, it must affect the next Parliament. So it is this Parliament to make those pay cuts. So if you fail to debate this particular that particular section, but you debate the whole thing in entirety, unless those recommendations are adopted by this Parliament, they will not affect the next Parliament. If the next Parliament touches it, it will move to the next Parliament as far as the Constitution is concerned. That's one. Number two, the national government has failed in staff rationalization. The Grand Coalition government remains intact in terms of its workforce and in terms of its departments. You will go to KICC and you'll find the Department of Metropolitan Department still exists somewhere, and there are people housed on 2 floors. So we have bloated wage bill because of people who are not working. The devolved structure, where we devolved functions in the Constitution to counties, those ministries where those functions were devolved still exist as they are. And I will give you one. The Ministry of Health sees the budget from 2013 to 2016 and 17 has increased tremendously instead of reducing. We are saying we have devolved the function of health, but the resources continue increasing year to year. So those are the issues. But I would have preferred the President to bite the bullet. Mheshimiwa Kuria, we came up with this principle of Punda Amechoka. By the way, that is the solution. Eventually, this country must confront the situation of over-representation. Yes. Unless we deal with the question of having 300 and 400 of us doing legislation, then the question of wage bill will not be addressed. Yes. So in my view, a referendum on this issue is something that we must consider. Put it on the table, whether people agree or not, let's put it on the table. But if you go to the public and say reduce the number of members of parliament, they will say yes, most likely will say no. Put the measures, make sure that this is debated, and since the Jubilee is the tyranny of numbers, we want to see how the rubber meets the road. Yes. Let Duale present this and debate, and let them pass it within 10 minutes like they passed the Election Laws Amendment Bill, so that we know the President is serious.
Yes. Barakabagi, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think the issue you are confronting here is a major national challenge. Because even if you look at it from the perspective of any employer, when they are looking at employing anybody, first you must match the competence and the skills with the job that the person is going to do. Now, the question is, have we done that as far as our legislative bodies are concerned? Yes. We talk about MCA, we got 1,400?
1,450.
1,450. All right? What job are they doing? Now, if you look at the Senate and the National Assembly, it's 416.
416.
Members of Parliament.
Yeah.
All right? Now, when you look at what is the output?
416.
Now, we have a problem because at the architecture of our constitutional dispensation, we created these frameworks.
Yes.
Now, the chicken have come home to roost. And we are saying, as the burden, the beast of burden, with Mwananchi, it is not possible to sustain this level of burden unless 2 things happen. One, we accelerate economic growth to the extent that the wage bill, in proportion to the entire economy, is small. That's an alternative. You can still maintain this number, but it has to be in tandem with a an economy that has grown. The alternative is to cut the wage bill. All right? Now, cutting the wage bill is a quick win, but in the long run, it is going to be a challenge, because you need to attract the best and the brightest in any field, and that's a fact. But where did we go wrong in the first place? Where we went wrong is, and these 2 gentlemen, very distinguished senators, should admit, when Sarah Serem, the chair, and her commission of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, determined this is the amount of money you can earn, it was a war. They were even threatening to sack her. True or not?
I was not there at the time.
You are represented by my learned senior.
That time. Yes.
Yes. But that is what happened. All of them. And what happened? They went to have a meeting. Where? Not in Parliament. In Karen. Where Sarah Salem and her commissioners had to have a kamkunji with the members of Parliament. The thing was even removed from the normal corridors of engagement. And that is what happened. So what is this? What is the implication of this? The implication here is this. Do we owe fidelity to the Constitution and the law? Because if we owed fidelity to the Constitution and the law, there would never have been a kamkunji between the Salaries and Remuneration Commission and Parliament.
Yes.
Now, this is something that should be admitted, because that is where we began going wrong. Because if you read the Constitution and you read the Act, the very Act that set up the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, if she was allowed to operate within the purview of that Act, let me tell you, you will not be in the situation we are in at the moment.
Therefore, the President talked about this based on a report from the SRC. The same SRC that was arm-twisted by the same legislative arm into abandoning that cause. So, are we just going round in circles again? That, the same legislative arm will say, no, we won't take that, and twist the same as SRC. So then it means even the President's pronouncements yesterday are of no consequence.
Let me say two things. One, I do sincerely congratulate the President for having taken this, as I said when I was beginning, at this time, because I know the implications and how deep it would hurt a politician. But having said that, and sincerely congratulating him, I want to say two things. And first, to correct, or rather to differ with my friend Karanja on where did we go wrong. And if you remember history, during the Moi government, before Moi went home, remember those famous days of golden handshake, when people are being told, go home, and then we'll give you so much so that you can go. That was before we had the new dispensation. And this is a problem that has sat with us for a long time. I want to invite you to look at the wage bill by government 10-15 years ago. It was still over-bloated at that time. But what we have done since then, we have continued to build and accumulate on the same overload. And further to that, I want to say to you two things that may surprise Kenyans. I'll give you one example. One time I was sitting with a senior official in Treasury with over some discussion, and then he was telling me, referring to a certain task force that was formed when Moi was exiting office for transitional purposes. And they appointed a chairman of that particular task force. That particular chairman was earning about 1.5 million shillings. And as we spoke less than 2 years ago of a task force that presided over that transition when Moi was leaving, that chairperson was still earning 1.5 million. Long way after that. And then further, look at, I sit in the Public Accounts Committee. I want to confirm to you one thing, that out of all total 47 counties, only 2 counties have got a wage bill of less than 55%.
Yes.
Only 2 counties. All other counties, and I'll give you a specific county that has got a wage bill of 92% of the amount that is allocated to them. And if you go if you flip through the Auditor General's report of that particular county, in some of their expenses, including the 92% expenditure on the entire of the allocation, they still have travels for bonding to Arusha. They still have travels to Kigali for Kikosa Games. They still have escapades by the governor and executive members to Panama and to other places. And I want to summarize this by telling you, and I have said I sincerely congratulate the president for taking this first step.
My concern, and I want you to respond to this as well. My concern, and if you look at the headlines, it is the president, and the words used here on the Star, the president urges leaders to accept SRC review.
Because
on the Standard, the president backs SRC's decision.
Yes.
How strong is the president's pronouncement yesterday? Is he just reduced to mentioning and saying I support SRC?
Can I make my point as I finish on that particular issue?
But
because
answer the question.
Yes, I'm going to answer that. But I first wanted to make Kenyans must understand this. This is the very heart and soul of where we're looking at. You see, unless this problem is addressed in its entirety, because ask yourself, we will win in this time, and we will have the next parliament elected. But what will stop? And look at, for example, what Karanja was addressing. Do you know, like, for example, in the county of Nairobi, there are more than 90 nominated members of the county assembly who earn a salary. But more than 300,000. So if we do not have a legislative framework that first is going to address these things, because I mean, how many times have you seen a governor going around pointing people that
my question is,
I'm going to employ you?
Senator, my question is,
so this problem cannot just cannot end that way.
Yes. But what consequence was the president's pronouncement, including this and backing the SRC's review in the State of the Nation address?
It is a first step.
Let me tell you,
that's a first step towards a long journey.
Let me tell you why. So it's a very nice populist statement.
Yes, that could excite the electorate.
By the way, they slept very well at night. But the fact is, when rubber meets the road, the SRC has only made a recommendation. It must come to Parliament for debate. And the day that is being debated, we are going to be off air. I can tell you that for free. Nobody is going to want to debate this. So therefore, that's why he says he urges it. But where my good friend Wamatangi talks about political goodwill, I've just mentioned that where the president has an interest in a matter, he commands his troops in Parliament. They troop back to the House in the House, both Senate and National Assembly, in large numbers.
Yes.
They make sure they vote. So if the urging here must have political goodwill, he must make sure that these recommendations come quickly.
Yes.
And make sure that his people are there. The tyranny of numbers to do this. Otherwise,
and ensure that Duale actually marshals all.
But on the part that it's very attractive to reduce members of the salaries of members of parliament, MCAs, etc. This group of people are always the soft punching bags for this sort of thing. But look at PSs. How much do they earn? Commissioners, how much do they earn? You have to look at the structure. That's what Wamatangi is talking about, Senator, that it's a whole package in its entirety. PSs are going home with 1.2 million shillings, etc., etc. And and you don't even know what they do as such. So therefore, this is a much larger, comprehensive argument that cannot be limited to the fact that you reduce salaries. But to that extent alone, I accept that we cannot appear as legislators to be earning and increasing our salaries day in, day out, yet the people who are teaching our children, who are the teachers, lecturers at the university and doctors...
But it does not mean that simply because the president announced this yesterday that automatically...
It will happen.
Let me put it this way.
No, it doesn't.
Let me put it this way. I think these headings are right.
Yeah.
Urges and recommends.
Yes.
And requests. Because you see, the president he cannot command.
No.
You get what I mean? He's saying there is a recommendation that is coming to you. I would like you to address it, because we are dealing with a national crisis. A national crisis. Why? What has happened in this country is, one, government has become an employment exchange. Employment what? Exchange. Both the county government and the national government. National government and county government. Now, what is going to happen? We are kissing goodbye development. Because if resources that are supposed to be appropriated for development is going to consumption, Because salaries are nothing else.
Recurrent expense.
The recurrent expenditure, you're just consuming.
Yes.
That the country, the leadership that we have, and when we talk about leadership, let us not just consign and confine it to the president. It is everybody. We have to ask ourselves, do we need good roads? Do we want good roads? Do we need good schools? Do we need good hospitals? Do we need security? Do we need lights? Do we need to be a people who have dignity? Because sooner than later, if we don't get ourselves to realize that developmental challenges is a national issue, everybody must partake in it. What is going to happen? We are now going to go into what is called begging.
Yes.
You are going to find the country appropriation in aid. All right, is going to be a very big proportion of our national budget. Now, when that happens, then you have lost your sovereignty. You have lost your dignity as a people. So this thing must be addressed. Nothing to do with the president, nothing to do with this or that.
But Kabage, you must agree, as the senator said,
yes.
His pronouncements mean nothing if at all he cannot marshal his
let me put it this way. What I'm trying to say is this. We sometimes tend to burden the president with everything. But I'm not underestimating the leverage the president can have in getting the members of parliament from his party to kind of say, wait a minute, let us eyeball each other and ask ourselves, are we a nation headed towards the abyss of a failed state? Because the moment you spend more money than you're actually making and you're not investing, you are not having productive capacity.
Yes.
And once you don't have productive capacity, then you better be Saudi Arabia, where money is coming from the ground.
Yes.
You better
Senator, you come from the Jubilee side, and you do enjoy a majority in Parliament. The president can actually command his troops in Parliament. We've seen it before.
Oh, it has happened. It happened in January.
We saw when he walked into
ask him what happened in January.
I think this is what is needed.
Fine, I'll answer that, but first I want to
January 2017
to congratulate my friend and remind him that they should not only admit to the tyranny of numbers when it comes to voting for a bill, but that they want to be passed. Because you remember when we are arguing about the majority and the capacity of Jubilee to win elections, because we have a tyranny of those numbers they're talking about based on what we do on ground and the following you have from the people. They say we have no tyranny. So now we admit, but let's go to the issue. The issue is this, that yes, indeed, we have a majority. But I'll tell you, this is such an individual decision. And you know, I say this with a lot of dispassion, and I hope nobody takes it against me, even in Parliament. Because some of those people you saw standing up to give an ovation
and even clapping
and clapping at this time when this was mentioned, I can tell you, and sorry to say so, probably more than 3/4 of them did it because they thought it is the right thing to do, to stand up. Not because they were convinced.
No, not persuaded at all.
Not persuaded. And it is most likely that a bill like that, you know, a recommendation like this can come
will meet hurdles.
and you find that it will meet a lot of hurdles.
There will be nobody there.
And because you'd ask yourself this question. Look at what you just shown there on TV, and you said that actually the president, his deputy, and the executive agreed to taking a 20% cut.
Yes.
Ask yourself, why did the legislature that time, the members of parliament, MCAs, agreed to taking a 20% cut at that time themselves? So I hope that was not window dressing when the people just stood up and
that's a concern, because the headlines
but however, let us say for purposes of clarity and being definitive, that the president has done his part. He brought it to Parliament. He has said it, and he has urged and told the people, this is what you need to do.
Fred.
So the ball now is in our court.
Fred, on my part, on this question of expenses, and Karanja Kabage is a billionaire, and he's not a billionaire because he doesn't know how to spend. He's a billionaire because he knows how to balance everything. The fact is that the president must bite the bullet, not only on salaries, but on expenses. We must go back to that place where there's, every time I go to the parliament, I see new cars that have been purchased, 4-wheel drives. Now, the point where there was a cabinet secretary, a minister at the time, who said you must have austerity measures, don't buy four-wheel drives, buy 2.5-liter engine cars, etc., etc. Unless you get to that point and bite the bullet and say all these cars that accompany the president, let them be 4, 5, cut the budget of State House, don't invite people for those lavish parties.
Don't travel abroad every now and then.
Don't travel abroad, limit the traveling of like what Magufuli has done, what Rwandan president has done, unless he pinches where it hurts most, particularly from his own people. Cut all these things that they do, close all the taps, my friend. People are going to clap, like Wamatangi is saying. When it comes to the debate, the consultation rooms at the back of Parliament will be full.
I think this is important. This is a very serious national agenda.
Yes.
Because for me, what does independence mean? Independence means the capacity of a nation to provide for its needs.
Yes.
Now, if that is the case, and is agreed, is a universal truth, Kenyans must ask themselves, among the nations of the world, where do we want to be as a country? My take is this: we must close ranks and say that we want to develop our country to be able to sustain ourselves. What we are dealing with here is an unsustainable situation of consuming more than you are producing.
Yes.
And therefore, it is not a matter of tyranny of numbers.
It is.
No. It is a tyranny. Listen, it is tyranny of reasoning. And that reasoning is not domesticated at either court or Jubilee. It is domesticated in the two teams. And these people must rise the occasion where somebody will say, from a historical perspective, Ntula Kilonzo Jr., Honorable Senator, Honorable Wamatangi, Senator for Kiambu, these gentlemen came together and said, we are doing it for the sake of our country. And
you see, Karanja, this not only comes down to the sitting members of Parliament, because you remember, and probably Senator Mutula can refresh us on this one. There was a lot of lobbying by most of the opposition MPs and the leaders in CORD that Parliament should pass a package for retirement for the former Prime Minister, for Kalonzo and some other opposition chiefs, and so that's
past leaders.
Past leaders, and you also and the lobbying was not only coming from members of Parliament, but even those that have left Parliament, including those leaders, and so when we are talking about the goodwill and harmonization of the march forward on dealing with this, we also must say it also must come from those leaders.
Now, gentlemen, Wanakaraja seems to say you need to work together on this one, but you seem to have reduced it to another CORD versus Jubilee.
No, I'm just saying because we have spoken about tyranny of numbers, and Karanja now brings in tyranny of reasoning.
Yes.
But there also has to be tyranny of goodwill.
Let me tell you something. the bottom line. The bottom line is you ask, how do we enforce this? And we go back to the original argument about corruption. This is political will, and I said this before, that when the president has an interest in a matter, in either the National Assembly or Senate, my friend, those things move faster than lightning. And therefore, I'm simply saying that it will not, because the president has said, this is my pledge, this is my government. It must start from his majority leaders, so that then it doesn't matter what the opposition does, because when they want something and we don't want it, they still pass it.
Yes.
So that is the goodwill I'm talking about. I might support as one person, or Matangi might support as one person. There might be more colleagues on their side refusing to participate in this. What I'm simply saying is that for you to achieve critical mass in Parliament, the Jubilee must vote with one voice like they do. Like they did.
If you look at some of the key issues, key legislative, matters that have come to Parliament.
The ones that you wanted to pass.
Please don't try to excuse members of CORD from this, because
gentlemen, you've reduced it basically back to
has played a major role in defeating some of the legislation.
Let me tell you. You know, the thing that we are discussing here, this is not a business of scoring points.
Yes.
It is the very core of our nationhood.
Yes.
This is the issue that we are discussing here. And I would like to appeal. Let us all take a mental flight and ask ourselves, what kind of architecture of a nation are we going to bequeath to the unborn in this particular country? And it's so important, because when you look at the issue here, if it's going to be played along the political lines, then we are going to miss the point. And the point is this: we have come to a point where we are saying we are at a tipping point as a nation, that unless we reverse course and say, wait a minute, we cannot continue the way we are doing, because if we did, it is at the peril of our nation.
Yes.
So therefore, I want to urge both the political divide to look at this issue as one where we close lungs and say it is the future of the country that is at stake. And when I say the future of the country at stake, is that his son and his son, I want them to think about their grandchildren.
Okay. On that note, I want us to take a break, because when we come back, we'll discuss the debt issue, the national debt.
That's what
external debts. If you just look at page 5 of the Daily Nation, as it's been tabulated there, 1.2 billion from the government of Italy, up to 80 billion shillings from Standard Chartered, a syndicated loan, 21 billion, 6.3 billion. It has been a problem. The president sought to address it yesterday. Let's take a break. We'll be back with that and a lot more stories.